18 ways to persist in your assumption. There are infinite ways of creating what you desire, and many of them have not been brought into existence. Most of us reflect back on the journey of creation and realize that there are many ways that we brought forth past ideas, circumstances, or experiences that might not have been from something that we have consciously learned. It is a result of experience that was mostly psychological in nature. Psychological being that we went into a state of mind and we maintained that state of mind, either consciously or subconsciously, and through that assumption, which was maintaining in that state of mind, we externalized into reality the outcome or the result that was based on maintaining true to the assumption. So fundamentally, two ways of creating success then is to see what others are doing, be inspired, and even model after them, or maintain true to the assumption that you will be able to create what you desire in ways that have never been discovered before. If you look at creation, or what we have brought forth in this outer world, we'll see a lot of innovation that has been a result of perhaps ideas combined, technologies combined, different experiences or models combined to create. We'll also notice that there are many things or experiences or outer world circumstances that have been brought forth in ways that we never pieced together. However, many of these outcomes or creations were brought forth as a result of what we call staying true to the assumption. And the assumption is the end result. And the way I like to look at it is that not only is it the end result, but it's the way you assume that it'll be brought forth. Now, what this is based on is consciousness. And many of us, including myself, reflect back on how we created things and realize that we always knew the best way to create, and we always knew what we wanted to create. So thus, this video is designed to release the psychological grip on facts or other people's assumption or outer world circumstances that appear, the key word is appear, to deny the possibility that you can create and deny the possibility that you can create from the way that has never been brought forth or ways that are unique to you. Universal consciousness. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. To be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. But your thoughts cannot change unless you have a new idea or new ideas. For you think from your ideas. All transformation begins with an intense burning desire to be transformed. The first step in the renewing of the mind is desire. You must first want to be different and intend to be before you can begin to change yourself. Then you must make your future dream a present fact. Now, there's many opportunities to receive information, and we receive it all the time from the world within, which we call the creative imagination, and affirm this information on our subconscious mind, or affirm it into our belief systems, which is the same thing, and have it externalized to not only bring it forth, but also renew the mind. See, what can happen on this journey is we can become too gripping to the outer world, in which Neville calls world of Caesar. And world of Caesar really represents what appears to cause you to be reactive to the outer world and bring you in a different direction. All of creation is complete and everything exists right here, right now. That's the first understanding of universal consciousness, one of the key important elements of universal consciousness. And that stated, we move through what we call bridge of incidents, or sometimes Neville refers to this as time tracks, to create or achieve or arrive at the destination. Now, both the journey and the destination is riddled with assumptions that we are making consciously based on what shows up, which is usually a reflection of what is assumed to be true from past experiences or outer world fact to be assumed to be true in our circumstance, although upon reflection we'll realize that there's been many facts that we have been proven to not be accurate in relation to what we desire to create in our past, and thus we can assume that this is possible again, to not only create what we desire, but created in a way that is unique to us, in a way that facilitates what we call renewing of the mind, realizing that the cause is within, and the outer world is a reflection of the inner world, which is the cause within. Number 1, cause and effect reflection, when assumed to feel like hard work rather than flow and joy, appears accordingly on the bridge of incidence. So much of this renewing of the mind, which is part of the journey of being true to the assumption and creating further assumptions that support that assumption, is a result of cause and effect reflection. Cause and effect reflection can appear to be hard work, or inner work is considered to be hard work, but that is an assumption in itself. See, the natural way of being is to grow and evolve. You have been on this journey, and your consciousness has been rising, and you have been increasing in understanding, reflection, and intelligence, which has been part of your natural evolution on the journey. It is only when we have assimilated certain experiences in our past that had assumptions and beliefs in which we assumed, you could say, that the great work, which is renewing of the mind, evolving ourselves within, is hard work, that it externalizes accordingly through tension, frustration, or experiences that reflect accordingly. However, when we find joy in and flow in the journey and the experience of cause within and effect reflection in the outer world, to understand ourselves, we not only are able to look at ourselves, but we have more joy and more revelations each day to reveal the reflections, which are assumptions within, externalized in the outer world. Which brings me to my next point. Number 2, lightheartedness holds the key. Now, when we talk about the concept of lightheartedness, we can also look at it from the perspective of flow, or bliss, or joy. In other words, we have less of a grip on the outer world and identifying with the world of Caesar in a way that causes us to react in a way that appears to move us in a different direction, but rather what it's doing is it's revealing to us about ourselves so we can maintain true to the assumption by evolving our beliefs and assumptions within. And the way to experience this is to maintain a certain degree of lightheartedness, to observe where you're tensing up, applying force. Good book to read is Power versus Force by David Hawkins. One of the important elements of power versus force is raising up your consciousness to a level what we call unconditional love, seeing giving and receiving as one. Since the outer world is a reflection of the inner world, then the inner world is creating the outer world, and thus if tension or force is experienced in the outer world, then the source is within, and we can release it within by first understanding and believing that it's possible, and number 2, observing the cause and effect reflection of the consciousness within and the externalization in the outer world, and asking ourselves, are we going through this process of renewing our mind from a place of force or from a place of real power of mind, which includes flow, joy, bliss, and ease? Charles Haanel says, as there is only one consciousness in the universe that is able to think, it is necessary follows that your consciousness is identical with the universal consciousness. Or in other words, all mind is one mind. There is no dodging this conclusion. So you've heard me say this many times. We are all individual expressions of the same mind. We are all connected and we are individualized, and these are different states of consciousness that we identify with that create in the outer world experience, which is a reflection of the consciousness. When we hold on to, excessively identify with, or react to the world of Caesar in a way which we call disempowering, we further affirm that state of consciousness and remain in it. So number 3, if there's only one mind, then there must be infinite states of consciousness representative of people, environment, circumstance, and information that is infinite in potentiality, which is based on assumption within, and the assumption within moving us into a state of consciousness that reveals itself as the current state of consciousness externalized as the people, environment, circumstance, and information that has been arranged accordingly to reflect the arrangement in the mind. So again, if all of creation is complete and we're moving through what we call the bridge of incidence or time track that appears to be time and space, then what is happening is that like frames, we are externalizing different configurations of people, environment, circumstance, and information based on our level of consciousness or the consciousness within. And if this is all one mind contributing to creating this outer world, then we choose, that's why we have the conscious mind, to have the certain experiences that we have consciously, and it may have been assumed, this is another key assumption, that we did not have the control to do so, but upon cause and effect reflection, we realize that through changing the meaning within, we can assume to have a higher degree of control and observe that higher degree of control externalize itself as accurate precision of creating what we desire and how we desire in the outer world. Neville says, your objective world is always reflecting your inner subjective state. Okay, so your objective world, as in the outer world, is always reflecting your inner subjective state. Therefore, it is impossible to change your outer world until you have changed your inner subjective state. You might assume that we're changing the outer world, but rather what is happening is we're changing our subjective state within, and it's externalizing as thoughts, emotions, and behaviors and outer world circumstances that changes on its own. Now, the reason why we want to hold true to this assumption is because it brings the power back. The truth is we always have the power. We always use the power. It's how we use the power. What we want to use the power from a greater perspective is to consciously use the power. In other words, choose. Knowing the state you want to occupy, completely absorb yourself in it as though it were a sponge and you, the water capable of entering and being absorbed by it. So number 4, see information as perspectives that harden into fact. Okay, look at the information that you receive from the outer world, people, environment, circumstance. All of this is information, 5 sensory data. We might assume that those facts bind us in a way that limits us. So the goal is to not change the facts or relation to the facts for the sake of changing it, but rather evaluating through cause and effect reflection if those facts are either affirming or assumed to be affirming, or denying or assumed to be denying, and changing the assumption of how we interpret those facts to be contributing to what we desire to create. So all information is perspective in the outer world, hardened into facts. And looking at it from this perspective gives us a higher degree of power. Again, it's not that we want to change the facts, but rather do it from a perspective of changing what is relevant as far as meaning and perspective on the facts to be affirmative to the key assumption by creating further assumptions that cause what we call empowered state, or we call this more of being less reactive to the world of Caesar. Because being reactive to the world of Caesar implies that the facts that we see in the outer world, what has been externalized, is in a way denying what we desire to create. Number 5, we react less when we seek to understand what reveals itself in the outer world. So there's many different perspectives of looking at facts or outer world circumstances. There's an infinite potentiality of ways of looking at facts and outer world circumstances or information. And what we're really looking to do is understand the cause and effect reflection from our inner world to the outer world, as well as the cause and effect reflection of the outer world with the other dynamics at play. However, when I say other dynamics at play, you can look at it from the perspective of outer world cause and effect reflection with other elements, people, environment, circumstance, and information in the outer world if you choose to, and you can create information that cross-references and explains it, or you could look at it from the perspective, or a combination of both, of how does this relate to what I desire to create, and what assumptions can I assimilate and believe to be true that will allow me to look at this outer world fact in a way that we call understanding. This also ties into a deeper level of affirmation of unconditional love. Unconditional love means you look at what is in the outer world and say, this is what it is. Here's what it may mean to others. Here's what it may mean in different cause and effect reflection based on its relationship with outer world elements. And here's what it means to me. And I accept and I understand what it means to me. And if I feel that it makes me reactive in a disempowering way, I can change my assumption that I am projecting onto these facts that appear to deny my assumption or deny that I will be able to create. And I can also look at it from different perspectives to be able to, as I call this, be more resourceful or work with the acres of diamonds, as Russell Conwell put it, because you've heard me say this many times. Opportunities and resources are available to us right now. Everything is complete. All of creation is complete. It only appears that the resource or opportunity is somewhere else. However, it is where you are right now. And when you can see it where you are right now, you move down the bridge of incidence to leverage it, or so it appears in the time and space agreement that we made. But really what it is based on assumption within that everything exists right here, right now, and you'll be able to see it right here, right now. Thus, you'll be able to understand different perspectives about what you're seeing. And you can choose the perspective that is in alignment with you. Which brings me to my next category, psychological release, or letting go. Charles Haanel says, the whole world is on the eve of a new consciousness, a new power, and a new realization of the resources within itself. So resources that appear in the outer world start with the recognition of the resources that are available within the self, and they externalize as the reflection of what we see in the outer world, cross-reference back to identifying with the resources in the inner world. The last century saw the most significant material progress in history. The present century will produce the greatest progress in mental and spiritual power. It's the understanding, fundamentally put, of the cause and effect relationship between the outer world and the inner world, and the joy and excitement that we feel on the journey of reflecting upon the effect of the outer world and recognizing that we can change the cause within to have it externalized. Now, if the facts in the outer world appear to deny, the world of Caesar appears to deny your assumption, then what we do is we look for reflection based on the outer world and cause in the inner world for the assumptions that facilitate, that allow us to appear to leverage or work with or move forward with whatever shows up as far as obstacle by changing the perspective around and seeing it as opportunity. Or rather than being as reactive, less reactive. Or instead of being reactive, proactive with whatever shows up. All of this is done through the change of consciousness within. The majority of mankind lives in the world without. Few have found the world within, and yet it is the world within that makes the outer world. It is therefore creative, and everything which you find in your world without has been created by you in the world within. So again, the assumption was the outer world was creating me. And while that may be experienced to be true, now when we radically shift our mind around, renewed in the spirit of the mind, we see it the other way around. We see ourselves as creating the outer world. So now the outer world becomes more of a cause and effect reflection of how so we are creating the outer world. And one of the clues of identifying how so is to observe your assumptions that you're identifying with people, environment, circumstance, and information in cross-reference to what you desire to create. So number 6, look for nuanced distinctions of how what you are experiencing is contributing. So one of the greatest joys of this journey is to be able to look at an obstacle that shows up, or what appears to be an obstacle, and cycle through different states of consciousness in your mind till you are able to see that obstacle as the opportunity. And we can be inspired by others, other information that allows us to see the obstacle as an opportunity, or we can go and practice this in the world within, because all information comes from this world within, the sixth sense, and we can cycle through this information by being less and less reactive, in other words, doing the work of cause and effect reflection, being joyous, releasing the identification or reactivity to the world of Caesar, releasing it more and more so each day. And as a result, you'll notice that you will reveal within, because you'll be more what we call empowered, and see the nuanced distinctions of how what you are experiencing, or whatever shows up in the outer world, the 5 sensory data, is actually contributing to what you desire to create, thus evolving your assumptions. Number 7, choose the assumptions that resonate with you in relation to what you desire to create. So there's infinity as far as potentiality for assumptions. And what we're looking to do is reflect on what we are experiencing on the outer world as denial of what we desire to create, and look at it from the perspective of what assumptions can perhaps you be borrowing from others, or information that you learn, and perhaps these videos that I share with you, or connecting back with your inner voice and creating your own assumptions that resonate with you. The key word is resonance. You'll know when you found the right assumption when it resonates with you. This is a very key distinction. If assumptions that are from past do not resonate with what you desire to create, then you have the power to release from those assumptions and choose an assumption that is in alignment to desire what you create. We're not changing the outer world circumstance per se. What we're really doing is changing our perspective, so we look at it from a different perspective, one that is in alignment, and that is cross-referenced by the assumption. Neville Goddard says, completely abandon yourself to a psychological experience. So all of this, what we're talking about here, is psychological in nature. It is designed to shift your perspective, or we call this reactivity, to the outer world in a way that denies what you want to create, or appears to deny what you want to create, and go into psychological states that are in alignment with what you desire to create, which are based on assumptions. And since the outer world's a reflection of the inner world and all of creation is complete, we're really choosing the consciousness state that reflects in the outer world as both the journey and the destination. If you become one with a state in your imagination, he says, you will rise to encompass it in flesh. This being true, yours is a journey from innocence to imagination to experience. So innocence, as in you did not realize how this works, to working with your imagination consciously, to now creating from the perspective of working with your imagination consciously. So number 8, notice how each day you are less reactive to what shows up in the world of Caesar, and see these elements as more affirmative to your assumptions. So this is one of the key litmus tests, is each day on the journey to creating what you desire, are you less and less reactive in a way that appears to pull you in a different direction, but rather what it's doing is revealing to you about your consciousness. As a result of doing this inner work, and that's why it's important to see it as joyful to do this inner work rather than force, because the assumption is that it is forceful, but it doesn't have to be that way, because you could choose another assumption that says this work of cause and effect reflection is joyful. And what you'll notice is that you're less reactive to the world of Caesar, and you will be able to transmute or readjust the meaning of the 5 sensory data to be more affirmative with your assumption in the spirit of harmony, benefit for you, others, divine, and evolution. Number 9, environments that are affirmations of your ideal stimulate supporting confirmations in regards to your assumption. So you've heard me mention this many times. There's only 4 modalities that I use to reprogram my subconscious mind. Subconscious mind audios, revision, self-talk, and environment. Environment was how this information got into our subconscious mind in the first place. So we can work with environment to affirm the assumptions and beliefs and ways of experiencing reality that we desire that is most in alignment what we're desiring to create. So there's going to be certain environments that you experience certain kinds of insights, perspectives, thinking, and stimulation of mind that appears to confirm that you are either on your way to creating what you desire. We call this synchronicities or signs or experiences or affirmations in the outer world. And what you'll notice is that these environments will also stimulate newer assumptions from your world within that will be unique to you. I call this conversation with infinite intelligence via your inner voice, that will allow you to experience a higher degree of faith, confidence, and affirmation that you are moving down the pathway in a way that is in alignment with how you want to create to what you desire to create. And the third category here, psychological expansion. So we talked about universal consciousness. In other words, everything exists right here, right now, which is a radical state of consciousness to assume for many of us, because we might not have seen reality from this perspective, also known as renewing the mind, realizing that once you renew the mind and see yourself as the cause of reality, you can move through these different bridge of incidences in reality to create what you desire by evolving your assumptions within, which is really then choosing the consciousness that you want to see reflected as the journey and the destination. We've talked about psychological release, in other words, letting go of elements that appear to bind us, which Neville calls the world of Caesar, reactivity to what is not in harmony with what you desire to create and how to do so. And I've made a number of videos on releasing from reactivity, or another good book to read is Letting Go by David Hawkins. Let's talk about psychological expansion, the ability to see more assumptions, the ability to see more possibilities and ways of creating success or what you desire to create that might not have been documented in this outer world as far as information-based facts. Charles Haanel says, mental power is creative power. It gives you the ability to create for yourself It does not mean the ability to take something away from someone else. Nature never does things this way. Nature makes two blades of grass grow where one grew before, and mind power enables men to do the same thing. So the universe has been expanding ever since what we call the Big Bang, continues to expand and continues to expand. And what continues to appear in this expansion is what we call evolution. As human beings, we call this evolution, progress, and advancements. You are part of this journey, and thus you can tap into this idea that this is part of a universal mind, and you are an individual expression of the universal mind, and thus you are contributing to this expansion in your way, which is called your creative expression. And this is really done by reflecting on the cause and effect relationships and the assumptions and the beliefs that you have with the outer world and inner world, and observe where you are denying this truth within yourself and releasing from these beliefs and assumptions. In other words, we call this doing the great work, or going into our subconscious mind and evolving our subconscious beliefs. Number 10, people represent the highest degree of mirror of assumptions and thus reveal to us about ourselves to a high degree. So Neville refers to this a lot. Everyone is you pushed out. This idea that everyone is you pushed out can be very powerful and revealing to you about yourself on the journey, because then what you'll notice is that as you change the cause within, and you do this a little bit more so each day, or sometimes even make some quantum leaps in this area, you'll notice that the people in front of you change. Circumstances change, the conversations change, the way you interact changes. The cause was really within, and you're changing within, and the cause and effect reflection allows you to find new beliefs and assumptions and affirm on your subconscious mind to have externalized as certain thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and words, communication, verbal and nonverbal, or whatever bridge of incidence experience that is on the journey to externalizing how you see that person. Number 11, a fear of what can be otherwise, even if surrounded by facts that affirm that fear, still only represent very little of all that is possible. In other words, you might have a fear, which is certain information that you've assimilated that is in your subconscious mind that appears to externalize a certain way, or you assume that it's going to externalize a certain way, can be surrounded by facts in the outer world to prove that that fear is going to exist. And this is all a reflection of consciousness. And we can then say, well, this is what's really happening. It's the cause within, assuming that this fear is going to externalize as its equivalent. And as a result of this, I can reflect upon the truth that not only is creation complete, but there's infinite variations of creating the end result, and thus I can choose my own pathway. And by recognizing that there's infinite possible ways of having it brought forth, you can then bypass the fear or the externalization of the fear by creating the assumptions of what can be possible to create, or even reflecting and realizing that there is other ways of creating rather than going through that fearful experience externalizing as the bridge of incidence or part of the bridge of incidence to the destination of what you desire to create. Number 12, not all facts need to be proven wrong by assumptions. So we got facts, outer world facts about various topics and situations and externalization of past experiences and past assumptions and states of consciousness that was brought forth to where you are right now. And in the world of business or entrepreneurship, we have many facts that govern the world of business. However, we don't need to prove those facts wrong in order to create. May be true, may not be true. The answer is really depending on what your inner voice conversation is with your world within, or as I call it, infinite intelligence, in your way of bringing forth, which may include rewriting those facts. Because a lot of these facts that are in the outer world, we have co-created through agreements with each other. And these agreements we've made with each other may be past assumptions and can remain as catalysts to your assumption. So in other words, perhaps you like the journey of creating this end result, which is the nice car that you want. Well, the nice car has been created by somebody else. It's a fact that has been created by others contributing to that fact. And you want your experience to have this car or to create the business success or whatever it is that is your end result. Now, this is what we call co-creation. And these co-creation elements, or these outer world circumstances, information, five sensory data, facts like the car, has been co-created. It's already there. And it has inspired you to move down the direction. So you don't need to rewrite the fact about that perhaps you need to rewrite your assumptions of if it's possible that you can have it or not, which is really then the journey of renewing the mind. Because the ultimate in this journey is all things are possible, and recognizing that all things are possible brings you into what we call in alignment with your higher self. So you might not necessarily want to create what others are creating. You're really choosing to create what you desire to create, which is your hunches and inspirations and your ideas based on your desire that is received within, which what I called is a conversation with the higher self. And the higher self is actually part of the evolutionary process. So if we're saying that since the beginning everything was expanding and everything is evolving, then we're guided by something and we're going somewhere. And it is this higher self-image of ourself that is part of the journey of this overall evolution. Now, not only do you create what is in harmony with your higher self, but you also contribute or co-create and produce outer world facts in harmony with others, which then act as the catalyst for them to further evolve their assumptions about what they're going to create in relation to their higher self. Number 13, when persisting with your assumption, realize how more so each day that the world is suggesting rather than telling or controlling. Now, this is another radical shift of mind or renewing of the mind. We once made the assumption that the world is controlling you or telling you what to do. You can choose to remain true to this assumption if you'd like, but what it does is it further reveals itself in the bridge of incidents on your way to creating what you desire. If you look at the outer world as mainly suggesting, then you'll find yourself less reactive to whatever is showing up and greater in your ability to cause and effect, reflect, and choose the assumption that will allow you to move in a different direction or a different time track or a different bridge of incidents that is most in harmony with not being identified with this idea or the assumption that whatever is controlling you in the outer world and preventing you or giving you a hard time to create what you desire. So life is an unfoldment, not assertion. Okay? Unfoldment, bridge of incidents, time track, the journey, these are unfoldments. Another way of looking at the frames reflecting themselves, unfoldment. What comes to pass in the world without is what we already possess in the world within. So the possession is the idea of what you desire to create, and the beliefs and assumptions that appear to facilitate it in the way we want to create it, or the beliefs and assumptions that appear to deny what we want to create, and our ability to change those assumptions around and bring them into alignment in not only what we want to create, but the way we want to create it. Number 14, there are infinite ways of creating what we desire, and we can choose the way we would like to create it through the revelations of our assumptions. So the revelations of our assumption is the cause and effect reflection of what shows up for you, how you interact with the outer world, people, environment, circumstance, and information, and the assumptions that create it. And upon cause and effect reflection of these assumptions that facilitate the creation, we can then say to ourselves, do we want to continue with these assumptions, or do we want to evolve them to create what we desire in the way we want to create it? Number 15. The goal is to create harmony between your inner world and your outer world in a way that affirms that you are creating what you desire. So rather than creating, it's really up to you if you want to do it, friction in the outer world, or friction called reactivity, which is based on past programming, which is based really then on past assumptions that we've assimilated and believed to be true. We want to find a higher degree of harmony between the world within and the outer world. Now this is externalized as what we call better relationships with people, environment, circumstance, and information. Not trying to prove and fight and create this force-based externalization of what we desire to create, but rather a peace base or a harmony base or unconditional love base. Now, this is really about, again, cause and effect reflection. Harmony between your inner world and outer world is facilitated by your assumptions. So whenever you see certain disharmony in the outer world, ask yourself, how can I look at this disharmony from a perspective that facilitates a higher degree of externalizing whatever as harmony or a higher degree of harmony? This will not only help us be less reactive to what shows up, it will also prove that you can have the power to change your outer world, the power of your mind, as in your assumptions, and have that externalized as thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that facilitate, and even circumstances changing on their own to reflect accordingly. Again, this is about a radical shift of mind, renewing of the mind, seeing yourself as the cause of the outer world, more and more so each day, rather than the effect. And it doesn't have to happen overnight. More and more so each day, you see yourself as the cause, through the reflection, through the evolution of your beliefs and assumptions within, and integrating some of this information, which has been a reflection of my own journey and my own experiences for the areas that I chose to apply this. And perhaps it can work for you. Or what it can do is facilitate your version of assumptions that are in alignment with what you desire to create. Neville says, the Bible refers to God as the Father, as I amness or light. But the word means consciousness, which, like an atom, has not age. Consciousness is living substance, which has no beginning and no end, but simply displays arrangements of itself. Number 16. The degree we allow ourselves to express reveals the congruence of our assumption, and thus is insightful for cause and effect reflection. So what we're doing is we're expressing ourselves, expressing our assumptions, expressing our beliefs. What we're really looking for is the reactivity, the tension. Are we allowing ourselves to express with congruence, or are we doubting ourselves, and that's appearing in the way we express? Now, there's different ways of expressing, but this is one of the important clues to reveal the hidden assumptions or the subconscious beliefs that we might not be aware of. The tension reveals the congruence or lack of congruence, the level of congruence or lack of congruence. When we release the tension by doing this work on ourselves, what happens is we express authentically from that assumption, and we'll see the externalization, which is the equivalent of that congruence from the assumption. Number 17, assumptions that enable empowerment include, I will always come up with a way via my inner voice conversation with infinite intelligence. Now, this assumption is facilitating. And the more we encourage an assumption like this, the more we realize, and I'll reflect back on my own experience and many that I've talked to about this on their journey, they receive within hunches, inspirations, ideas, plans, and evolved assumptions to help them override the programming in the outer world. And when I say override the programming in the outer world, I'm not talking about denying it, but rather understanding it and seeing it from a different perspective, one that is more in alignment with what you desire to create. Number 18, allow related assumptions to be received within as ideas, visions, or inner voice conversations by releasing the tension within and reactivity to the world of Caesar. So this is probably one of the most important elements of this entire discussion here, is the recognition that reactivity is revealing to us about ourselves. It is revealing to us about our assumptions, and it is revealing to us about what assumptions we can choose, which we can, as stated, receive as far as conversations with our inner voice, with infinite intelligence, or whatever modality you would like to use, and or conversations with others who we call inspiring, or environments that we call facilitating or empowering. As we encourage these outer world or inner world stimulus elements that facilitate a higher degree of empowerment and less reactivity, we can then receive or create new assumptions, evolve our assumptions, and affirm those assumptions and maintain true to them to externalize in creating in reality what we desire in a way that is more in alignment of how we choose. So in grand summary, there's what you desire to create, there's where you are right now, and then there's the journey that is revealing about your beliefs and also your assumptions. And as a result of the cause and effect reflection of what assumptions you identify with and the externalization of those assumptions, we can then reflect back and choose the ones that are more in alignment. And we don't have to feel like we have to create assumptions based on what assumptions have been created based on the attachment to certain facts in the outer world that we receive from the outer world, and instead choose and realize that there's infinite assumptions. The potentiality is there. Now, when you assume that there's an infinite potentiality, there's infinite intelligence, there's infinite ways of creating, all of creation is complete, you then allow yourself to be more what we call open-minded to receive and open-minded to observe the outer world and shift our perspective around. Now, no matter what you look at in the outer world, There are infinite ways of looking at that particular five sensory data, be it a person, be it information, be it a book, be it this audio. When your perspective changes, and you'll notice this when you integrate information from, let's say, a book or what you learn, when you integrate it, in other words, you acquire wisdom, which is really knowledge plus experience, you'll be able to shift your perspective around on that same information and see it from many different perspectives and choose the different perspective that is in alignment or in congruence with the way that you would like to create. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.